It started with the sound of scratching metal, that unmistakable screech of a key dragged where it doesn't belong. I bolted out the front door, adrenaline surging, only to find the sight that neighbors would later talk about for years. There she was, Karen, our bloated HOA president, her floral blouse straining against her frame, yanking furiously at the handle of my Jeep. Her face glistened with sweat and smugness as she hollered to no one in particular. "This vehicle is illegally parked. HOA rules make it mine now." I froze for half a heartbeat, disbelief washing over me. This wasn't just petty harassment or a nasty letter in the mailbox. This was my property Jeep, the one I'd driven since my days contracting for federal operations overseas. Karen had crossed the line from nuisance into outright theft, right there in broad daylight, in front of anyone who cared to watch. "Get your hands off my Jeep," I shouted, my voice sharp enough to make two kids across the street gasp. But Karen only smirked, clutching her clipboard like a crown. "You don't pay dues. You don't follow our aesthetic codes. This vehicle is a violation, and by authority vested in me, it belongs to the HOA now." She tugged harder at the door, her rings clinking against the handle. "Consider it seized." The absurdity made my blood boil. "This isn't even HOA property," I fired back, storming down the steps. "And you have no authority to seize anything." She barked a laugh, fat and cruel. "You think the law protects you? The HOA is the law here. Maybe you should have read the fine print before you moved in." What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that this Jeep wasn't just mine. That vehicle was still on lease to a federal task force, equipped with covert comms and surveillance gear tucked behind the panels. It wasn't just transportation, it was an active piece of government property, loaned to me under strict protocols. And the minute Karen laid her greasy hands on it, she didn't just trespass against me. She trespassed against the United States. As if on cue, the engine rumble of a second Jeep echoed from the corner. A black SUV rolled into the cul-de-sac, sleek and unmarked, but unmistakably federal. Two men stepped out, clipped hair, dark jackets, their movements calm and purposeful. One flashed his badge before a single word left his lips. "Federal agents." "Step away from the vehicle." Karen's smirk wavered. "Excuse me? This is my neighborhood, and I have full authority here," she bellowed, puffing her chest like a cartoon villain. The taller agent took 2 slow steps closer, his voice steady but lethal. "Ma'am, that Jeep is federal property assigned to ongoing operations. Tampering with it is a federal offense." The neighbors who had gathered by now audibly gasped. Mr. Nolan, the retired schoolteacher, muttered, "Dear Lord, she's finished." Jessica, holding her toddler, whispered, "I knew she'd snap one day." Phones were out, recording, the glow of cameras capturing Karen's empire of arrogance collapsing in real time. Karen's face twisted. "Federal property? Don't make me laugh. This man doesn't even pay dues. He's a freeloader, a disgrace to the neighborhood." She slapped the hood of the Jeep, the hollow thud echoing like a death knell. "If it's federal, then the feds can fine him too." That was the breaking point. The shorter agent raised his radio, speaking calmly into the mic. "Dispatch, we've got an HOA president interfering with Task Force Asset Bravo 7. Proceeding with detainment." Karen's eyes widened at the words task force. Her smirk curdled into panic. You can't do this. I'm the president. I have power here." But the taller agent had already moved, spinning her around with practiced ease, snapping handcuffs onto her wrists as the crowd erupted in cheers and shouts. Her shrill voice pierced the air. "You're all against me. This is a conspiracy." But her kingdom was gone. The clipboard slipped from her hands, clattering to the asphalt. On it, the so-called violation report listed one item: Jeep illegal vehicle, seized for HOA use. The neighbors laughed outright. One even shouted, "Guess you'll need a new rulebook in prison, Karen." Ethan, my son, stepped onto the porch, his phone raised high. "Got it all on video, Dad," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of fury and triumph. She can't talk her way out of this. The agents placed Karen into the back of their SUV, her protests muffled behind the tinted glass. For the first time, the street felt lighter, freer, as if a shadow had lifted. Neighbors hugged, clapped me on the back, whispered in disbelief. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of Karen's fall. Karen's arrest that night didn't just shake our cul-de-sac, it sent tremors through the entire county. The sight of her stuffed into the back of a federal SUV, her cheeks flushed red, and her shrill protests muffled by tinted glass, spread across social media before dawn. By the next morning, news vans were parked at the corner. Headlines scrolled across TV screens. HOA president arrested for tampering with federal vehicle. It wasn't just neighbors gossiping anymore. The whole town wanted to see what would happen to the woman who had made herself queen of petty fines. The investigation moved swiftly. Federal agents scoured her HOA office and uncovered years of fraudulent records, phony fines, fake bylaw amendments, even doctored signatures. She had siphoned tens of thousands from residents into her personal account, hiding behind technical jargon and threats. Worse still, they discovered emails linking her to a shady developer who had promised kickbacks if she could clear certain properties by pressuring their owners out. She had been playing a long con, and the Jeep incident was simply her arrogance catching up to her in spectacular fashion. Neighbors who had been too afraid to speak suddenly found their voices. Jessica came forward with letters Karen had sent threatening to seize her home over unauthorized window curtains. Mr. Nolan produced photographs of Karen trespassing in his yard with a tape measure at 6 a.m. A veteran down the street testified that she had tried to fine him for raising his flag too high. Every story built a wall of evidence around her, higher than any defense her lawyers could scale. The trial was set in federal court, and the building overflowed the day it began. Reporters, neighbors, even strangers lined the pews. Karen entered in a wrinkled gray suit, her once smug face pinched and pale. She tried to carry herself with dignity, chin lifted, but the weight of every eye in the room pressed down on her shoulders. For the first time, she looked small. The prosecution laid out the case like a blueprint of corruption. They displayed the fake violation letters, the bank transfers, the contract with the developer, and finally the footage of that night. Karen screaming, slapping the hood of my Jeep, and declaring it hers moments before agents cuffed her. Gasps rippled through the room. The prosecutor's voice rang steady. This was not enforcement. This was theft. This was fraud. And this was a crime against the very law she pretended to uphold. Karen's defense was pitiful. She claimed she believed the Jeep was abandoned, that she thought the HOA bylaws gave her power, that she was simply misunderstood. But each excuse crumbled under the mountain of evidence. And when the agents took the stand, explaining that the Jeep contained sensitive federal equipment and classified communication systems, the jury's faces hardened with outrage. Then came the neighbors. One after another, they stepped forward, their voices trembling but resolute. They spoke of years of fear, humiliation, and financial stress under Karen's reign. Jessica cried as she described nearly losing her home. Mr. Nolan clenched his fists as he recounted her threats. The veteran's voice broke as he explained what it felt like to be told his flag was a violation. Each testimony wasn't just evidence, it was an exorcism, the community purging the poison she had injected into their lives. The most powerful moment came when Ethan, my son, took the stand. He raised his right hand, swore the oath, and then looked directly at Karen. She pointed a loaded gun at me that night, he said. She ordered a man to intimidate me on my own porch. She thought I was just another victim. But I'm not. I'm a federal agent. And I will never forget that she was willing to risk lives, mine, my father's, my neighbor's, just to keep her illusion of power. The jury leaned forward, silent, their expressions carved in stone. Karen lost control then. She slammed her fists on the table, shrieking, "He's lying. He's just a kid with a toy badge. You're all against me." The judge's gavel thundered. "Order," he barked. But Karen kept screaming until deputies restrained her. The jury saw everything: the desperation, the unraveling of a woman who had built her life on intimidation and could no longer mask the fear eating her alive. The verdict was swift. Guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, impersonation, harassment, and tampering with federal property. The judge's sentence came down like thunder: 15 years in federal prison, restitution to every resident she had stolen from, and a lifetime ban from serving in any official capacity. The gavel struck, and the room erupted in cheers. Neighbors hugged, some cried, and I felt Emily's hand slip into mine, her grip tight, her voice whispering, "It's finally over." But the true victory wasn't in Karen's punishment. It was in what came after. The HOA, stripped of its leadership, dissolved almost immediately. In its place, the neighbors formed a community association, voluntary, transparent, built not on fines, but on cooperation. The first meeting was held in our backyard, under the very tree Karen had once threatened to cut down for being unsightly. Families brought food, kids played tag, and laughter replaced the silence of fear. At the second meeting, the neighbors unveiled a gift. A wooden sign, hand-carved, planted at the entrance of the cul-de-sac. Burned into its surface were the words, "Respect over rules." Grandpa touched the carving with trembling fingers, pride in his eyes. Ethan saluted quietly, the flag above us waving strong. For the first time in years, the street felt like home again. Karen's name faded into a cautionary tale. Parents told their kids, "Don't be a Karen," as a lesson about arrogance and abuse. Online, her story spread as proof that bullies eventually collapse under the weight of their own lies. And though she sat in a prison cell, railing against conspiracies, her voice no longer carried beyond the bars. As for me, I found peace not in watching her fall, but in watching my neighbors rise. We learned that real authority isn't in clipboards or threats, it's in unity, in truth, in the courage to stand together. So I'll leave you with this. When someone like Karen abuses power and claims ownership over what isn't theirs, where does real justice lie? Is it in the years she serves behind bars, or in the way a community reclaims its freedom after she's gone? Right or wrong? I know this much: Karen mistook my Jeep for hers, and in the end, she drove herself straight into her own downfall.